you could not touch the little tops of the mics.
Like this. Like that. I'm so sorry.
I have headphones in and it's very loud.
Right, I'm very sorry.
What about blowing it like
Thank
this?
you. Huh?
What about blowing it like this?
No, that's even worse. Hello, and welcome to the Ask the Industry podcast, episode 62. My name's Simon Caine, and for those of you new to the show, this is the podcast where I interview the most influential people from the worlds of stand-up, comedy, radio, and today, the Edinburgh Fringe. Today is a bit different to a normal podcast. I explain in the podcast how this big panel of experts came about, but essentially I got chatting to a few industry experts during the Fringe who all had varying degrees of comments about how it was going this year and what it was like and their interpretation on how the Fringe was developing. And I thought what would be really interesting is for this year, and potentially if you like what I'm doing with this, once every year after Edinburgh, doing a panel of experts from different sections of the industry to discuss how they thought it went and what it was about. This year I've heavily focused on awards, reviewers and promoters. The people you're about to hear are Steve Bennett, the founder of Chortle. He's also the head reviewer there and started the Chortle Award and the Chortle Student Awards. Bruce Dessau, who is the founder of beyondthejoke.co.uk and is also the London Evening Standard reviewer for comedy. Copstick, who is the head reviewer at the Scotsman newspaper. Hils, Jago, who is the founder of the Amused comedy clubs and Laugh Off Awards. John Fleming, who is the founder of the Malcolm Hardee Awards. Barry Ferns, who is the founder of the Barry Awards and Angel Comedy Club. Both Barry and myself were also there representing the comedians in the conversation and injecting our perspective from the performer's side of whatever they were talking about. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Barry, Sarah, Rachel and the entire team at Angel for letting me use their new venue for this, and thank you so much to all the panellists for being so up for this and for being so cooperative. It took a lot of choreographing and a lot of scheduling for everyone involved, myself included, to get everyone in a room at the same time, especially directly after Fringe when everyone's sort of recovering and doing their own thing. So I can't thank them enough for being so supportive of the idea and for being so receptive to it as well. Before I hit play on the interview, I just want to say if you could join the Facebook group, that's the best place to get a heads up on when I'll be doing more pods like this, as well as a myth-busting conference which I'm working on, which is going to have to get pushed back to next year now. I was hoping to do it before the end of this year, but unfortunately it's one of those things where I've overstretched myself and also I've reconsidered how it's going to get formalised. So if you enjoyed this and you would like to come down and meet industry experts and discuss and ask your questions directly, that's the best place to find out about that conference. Also, to ask your questions directly via me, I put up a thing a few days before every guest so you can ask them anything you want to ask them. No question is too stupid, no question is too big or small. I'm the one that's going to be asking it. I'm the one that's going to look like the idiot if it is a stupid question. So feel free to try and troll me, but I'll probably do my research before every question I ask anyway. And also I have editing power, so if you try and troll me, it probably won't get in. But if you have actual questions you want to ask, that is the best place to find out about future guests. Also, please do consider giving it an honest review in iTunes. You have no idea how much these help out. Like, they make a difference to charts, positionings, but they also make a difference to when people are landing on the podcast and are looking at whether they think it's a quality product or not. So if you like this and you think it's worth 4 or 5 stars, whatever, please do leave a review and a star rating. If you think it's worth 1 star, don't bother. Like, just leave it. Like, there's no point in adding that negativity to it. Just send me an email with your constructive feedback, that's fine, but don't bother leaving a review. Without any more delays, here is our first post-Edinburgh Fringe analysis podcast.
You couldn't hear anything.
Can you hear yourself?
I can
through this.
I can vague. I tell you what, pass me that. I'm going to start.
He can dub himself in later.
Because he's a liability.
He'll dub himself out is what I'm thinking about. If he's chatting and it picks it up.
I'll probably dub myself in post.
Yeah, but can you dub yourself out?
Have you done this before?
Alright.
So yeah, I've done.
I've
done at least 4 that I can count in this room.
Right.
So essentially,
Okay, note to Hils, not in charge of this one. Him in charge of this one.
Yeah, I'm not. And you.
right. So it's right. Okay.
And you.
Essentially, what happened was,
For him.
guys. Okay, right. Essentially, this
This is why he normally does one-on-one.
I know this is a lot less hectic one-on-one. Right. So essentially, what happened was in Edinburgh, I met John in the back of a van, and we discussed afterwards how he was quote-unquote bored at the Fringe, which was your words, not mine.
I refute this quote.
You refute
So
that,
we're
right?
now all going to have a go at John.
We're not all going to have a go at John, but he mentioned that you, Copstick, were equally. Is it true you weren't as?
Oh, I thought I wasn't just bored. I was more irritated than bored. This Fringe, I thought there was just an appalling, really irritating sense of entitlement, amongst all the acts, a real sense of homogenization, a kind of tsunami of people who aren't really comics but who had come up with some put together Edinburgh Hour by numbers, usually involving their fucking depression or how they stubbed their toe on holiday in 1984, or their mum hadn't been nice to them, or their uncle hugged them too much or not enough. Anyway, they were a bit depressed. Everyone would go, oh, nobody came to see my show. Well, people did come to see my show, but they weren't nice to me. And everybody had all the kind of random shit, the kind of sludge of the depth of the level of sludge comics who are all doing more or less the same thing in a hideously self-pitying but simultaneously self-congratulatory way is getting thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. I mean, I think there's always decent comics on top of that, but the industrial sludge is getting thicker every year, and I felt that it practically suffocated the entire thing this year. I mean, you're fucking depressed, go off and just fucking talk yourself.
So what did you do about it?
Yeah, don't do a show about it. Or if you do a show about it, really, I don't care about you.
But
I
maybe
don't
it
care
makes them
about
feel
you at
better.
all.
Maybe it makes them feel better.
I don't
That's
care
why they're
about
doing
you
it.
at all
I think
unless
that's
you make me care.
But they're not doing it for your benefit. They're doing it for their own benefit. Are we live, by the way?
Yeah, no,
But they're doing it for their
exactly.
benefit because, you didn't
Yeah,
like it, and that's cool. That's up
No,
to you.
but why expect an audience to sit there and pay or put something in the bucket at the end and applaud you and be nice when you're doing it for your
Because
benefit?
it's cheaper than therapy, isn't
Yeah,
it?
something that you do for your benefit is called wanking.
I resent it when comedians say comedy is therapy. I think comedy can be therapeutic. I don't think they should be using it as therapy. That's my take on it.
I don't think Michael McIntyre gets
But
much
it's
in the way of
clearer now,
therapy
isn't it?
out of
Because of the
making
subject
thousands of
matter that
people
they're
laugh
talking
all the
about.
time.
It feels more like they're addressing their mental health issues and stuff.
I've always say to comics when they are talking about what they're going to put in their show next year, I always say, if you've got a story, something autobiographical you want to sell, if you must do it, write it down, put it in the drawer and save it till you're famous, because then people might be interested in hearing it.
Now that's a very good idea.
Now.
But surely if you have to do a 60-minute show, you can't just do gags. There's a limited number of gags there are.
Tell that to Michael McIntyre.
But
Tim Ryan and
it's
those people.
better if you have a narrative, though.
Why is it better if you have a narrative? It's
easier
better
if you have a
you're funny.
narrative.
It's better if you're funny, really, is the bottom
It doesn't
line.
need to have a storyline, doesn't need to have a narrative arc specifically, if it's funny right the way through.
I went to see a perfectly good Canadian comic. I think he's quite well known in Canada, but he's not well known here. And
What's his name?
his name is Peter White.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And he had a load. He had like, it was like 4 little bits of club set put together, and the first bit wasn't very good. The second bit was monumentally brilliant about racism. And then he did another bit. Then at the end he said, I'm going to do a really personal bit now because I've been told that when you do an Edinburgh show you've got to do a personal bit. And then did this thing about how he had a girlfriend who every time he threatened to dump her, she threatened to commit suicide. Thank you and good night. I'm here all month. Try the veal.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? They feel they've got to do it that way. I mean, it's a valid way of doing it. If you've got a story to tell, do it, and it's easy to hold it now if you've got something to peg it to. If you shove it on as a sort of a postscript going, this Edinburgh shows need to do this, and that 40 minutes need to do this, and that. It gets like a Mills and Boon book. You have to hit a certain point every.
Yeah, but I mean, all the dead dad. It really doesn't matter what you do if you're doing it well enough. But 99% of these people aren't doing it well enough.
No.
But wouldn't you say that comedians have to, because you never start great, you have to work your way to it. And if you want to talk about mental health issues or deaths or anything like that, you've got to start at a certain crap level to work your way up to being good at talking about those things.
Well, don't start at a certain crap level
Yeah.
for an hour, for fuck's
But it's
sake.
like what Hils said, it's only sticking in your drawer. I mean, we had this discussion a while ago, and I think worked out the person who possibly originated the Dead Dad thing was Russell Caine. But Russell Caine, that wasn't his first show, but the show he won the award with was the show. So yeah, he had a few years of building up and finding his voice and being articulate enough to say that. But yeah, as Hils said, if the first thing you do when you do an hour show is about your father dying or something, you might not have the tools to discuss something. particularly something as heavy as that.
But do you
And no one really wants to know, whereas
If
when
you're
you're
not
famous,
well, yeah,
people go,
there's
oh, well, that's
elements
interesting,
that-
that's why he's like he is, or whatever, some context.
Ultimately, you've got to be funny whatever
Yeah.
you do.
Well, I think
And
the
I think
And
a
it's
big-
hard
a
to
big
be
pro-
funny about something miserable.
But I think it's difficult at the Fringe because so many people are trying things out. You know, like Frank Skinner. The first time Frank Skinner came to the Fringe, he'd done like 5 gigs, and I know this was years and years ago. You know, but I think that the Fringe is so much about experimentation, and so many people are reaching so high because as a performer, you're sold the idea of winning an award. That's what you're sold as the myth.
Who sells it?
It's just within the myth. It's within the kind of the idea. You go to Edinburgh and there's the award, and there's a separate thing. Winning an award and doing a show that has that kind of narrative that attracts the kind of the award-winning narrative.
Well, no, you
is
see
a
someone like
separate
Tom
thing from being
Ballard,
funny.
that's just full of
It's
gags.
a separate thing from being funny. Like some of the funniest shows that I've seen at the Fringe were not nominated for awards, like because being funny isn't seen as good enough. It's not like Michael McIntyre was.
Well, you
never
could
nominated.
criticise the panels for that then, couldn't you?
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah,
But whose
absolutely. But I
fault
think
is it? Do you think is it the panel or is it our fault for thinking or trying to
when you say
preempt what you
art,
want?
you mean
Comedians.
Okay.
I'm sorry. When I refer to I'm a comedian in this, you guys are all industry.
I thought you were podcasters. So.
No. Well, I am preempting what
What
my
on the
audience
team
will
you're
want.
on today, Simon?
Yeah, I'll switch sides, whatever, if it helps my career. We as comedians, I feel, try in a way sometimes to preempt what panels want and what, and like you said, it's the comedy by numbers type idea where if we think that's what's in vogue, comedians sometimes. And by the way, I'm playing devil's
But you
advocate.
should be
on
ahead
this.
of the game, not behind it.
And you shouldn't be in it just for the fucking sparkly
No.
prizes.
No.
No, I should point out anything I'm going to say is I'm playing devil's advocate on questions I've been asked. I don't necessarily agree with anything.
I don't care. I'm holding you to everything. And
That's too loud for me.
if anything, that's the problem with comedy right now is that you're willing to say things just in order to.
I can credit the people if you want.
You need to have a coherent voice. You need to be honest on stage, and like being honest on stage is being honest about what you find funny,
Yes.
as well as the narrative, and not doing something because you feel it should be said. So it's a good example of like, within this podcast, yes, it should be said, but I think I think a lot of the things that are coming up now, everyone's kind of naming people doing it by numbers, like a Dead Dad show or and that can be a bit disingenuous and a bit boring because people aren't being authentic. And
also
being authentic can just be being really funny, and that's authentic.
I mean, I think you can certainly on the. I definitely think that an industry is fucked the minute most of the people in it are only doing it for the prizes. So that's one thing. Yeah, I just fuck off out of it if you don't want to be. If you actually don't want to be a comic and you wouldn't do your show to one person and you don't think your show is so great that you're happy to do it to a mirror. But I also think that the panel, certainly on the big awards, the panel on Malcolm Hardee Awards, of course, is beyond reproach, beyond criticism. But I distinctly remember Bruce and I taking on the Perrier panel, who two man and woman and boring twat sat there chanting, but he's just funny. When we were going, Michael McIntyre's brilliant,
yeah.
Michael McIntyre's brilliant. You know, he's just funny. Now, Michael McIntyre was criticised for that from the moment he set foot on a stage. He was criticised and he was hated for the fact he went on, told jokes, and he could rip up any audience. And he didn't change at all. The industry or television or whatever eventually came back to fit him and go, he can keep anybody laughing for an hour. We will come round to his way of thinking and give him a prime time show.
I've spoken to people like Mick Perrin and people that do tours, and they've said that awards look great on posters, but they don't necessarily sell out venues. And you're nodding now, Hils.
Well, I think, and I don't only think that, but I think, interestingly, at the moment, if you, as a booker and a promoter, producer, whatever you want to call me, you know, I like everyone else, wants to have a few names on a bill because we believe, or are led to believe, or think that draws an audience in. But if you ask the audience, they've got no clue who they're seeing. No clue at all.
So do you think awards are helping outside of Edinburgh? Do you think they're actually making an impact, or do you think they're just a nice sparkly thing?
I think it's just a nice sparkly thing to have on a website or on a poster. I don't think it draws an audience.
I mean, someone like John Bishop says that he couldn't get, in terms of TV, he couldn't get arrested until he got an award nomination. You know, he said he'd done Edinburgh.
I think it works for industry. I think the television and radio people are very excited about awards because it's a justification for their belief that this person is good.
Because they don't have any confidence.
Yes,
so it kind of
also-
goes a bit.
keeps them in a job. Keeps them in a job, because if a producer is going to take a risk on somebody, because each producer is as good as their last job. So if somebody's won an award, they can just go back to that and go, oh well, that person's won an award, so I thought they were good. And ultimately, so many things come back to people just conserving their job, conserving their career. It's a conservatism that is.
Yeah, because the people in the television industry haven't got a fucking clue, so they need somebody else to go, he's good, she's not bad, he's good.
That's a recurring theme in questions we've been asked, is why is there not a link between new talent and TV and radio? Why are they pretty much picking up people that have awards, or picking up people that have been sort of pushed forward maybe through like a management thing or from PRs and just shoved into a position because they fit a bill that, they could be the next whatever name comedian you want to fit in there. And instead of them going, actually there's a comedian out there that hasn't got the money to get a PR, hasn't got the money or hasn't been picked up by an agent for whatever reason. They've been doing it 15, 20 years. They're better than someone who's been doing it 5 years. Let's put them on TV and see what they can do.
Well, because I think 99 times out of 100, they're probably shit. The
person who's been 20 years.
There are. I can't think of all that many that I think are. You go, oh, I'd put them on telly. Nobody's ever heard of them. But
I think there are. But I think the problem is that
name names.
No, that would
name
be
names.
No, I'm not going to.
Why?
But I think I think the problem is that anyone who's been around any length of time who hasn't progressed up the ladder, people are nervous. Industry people, producers, whatever, television, radio, whatever, are nervous that this person hasn't got enough drive, can't write enough material, hasn't got enough ambition. I think that's part of the problem, and they would be investing a lot of time and their reputation in those people. I think that's part of the problem.
And to move stand-up into TV, which is a different genre. It's okay if you're on a panel show, that is basically stand-up. And obviously, you can understand why they want new people for that.
Well, I'll give you an example. Marcus Birdman. I said I wouldn't name anybody.
Yeah.
He's been around a very long time. He's excellent. He always rocks a room. No, he rocks a room. They love him. Absolutely love him.
But if you're in television, then you suggest someone and he fails on television, it's your fault.
Yes.
If you suggest someone and he fails and he's got awards, then it's not your fault.
No, it's the
judge's
Yes, exactly.
Is that really the way? Is that the way that TV people see it? That if someone
they
fails,
see it, it's an unconscious thing. It's
it's endorsing.
preservation.
Yes,
Preservation. People are preserving their careers.
Also, the people who win awards are good. Let's not forget that as well. You always get saying, well, you're not picking these people.
I think.
Can I just say, we're not downplaying awards in any way. We're trying to just assess whether they, outside the bubble of Edinburgh, actually are worth taking seriously, or if they contribute to a career path for that performance.
I think, a lot will say be picked up by Radio 4. It's a narrative thing that can be chunked into half an hour. So that's like a next step that's quite easy. If you're Bridget Christie, say that show makes a nice Radio 4 show, off the peg, got an award. Victory there, so it's all right. So they can help in that way, I think.
I think it depends on the person, because there are loads of people who have won, say, the Perrier or the If comedy or the Fosters or the whatever it became, and they haven't gone on to anything. Of course you got Bridget Christie, because when she won it was, oh look, it's Stuart Lee's wife and she's a raging feminazi, and she's a woman and she's won the Perrier. There was a lot else going on, but there's quite, it didn't change Phil Nichols' life, and it didn't change Brendan Byrne's life. And who remembers Los Trios Rembarcas? I think
Lana Woodley.
Who?
Lana Woodley, who won in 80.
But they had a big career in the States. They had a big career in the States. So
somebody very clever once said, "It's not enough to be talented. You have to have a talent for your talent."
And I think what they would do with what's going to happen with Richard Gadd this year, because he doesn't. Does he fit into a neat box, a neat marketable box?
I was chatting to him the other day. We were just having because he's coming on a different podcast I'm working on, and my other podcast is where I interview them now and then interview them in a year's time with the questions they left, and then they ask themselves it. And he was like, "I don't know if I'm going to have a good year. I don't know if this is going to last. I don't know what's going to happen." And I don't know how comfortable he's really saying. I might have to ask him when I get off this. But it's the same thing with most comedians, where they're like, "I've got the award. I might have got a run at the Soho. Where does that leave me after that? Where do I go from there?" And it comes down to you saying, when you talk about, Hils, when you talk about a 5-year plan, I suppose there's conflicting issues there, because would you say that having a plan is even something you can do in this industry after a certain point, because it's so random?
It gives you objectives and milestones to work towards, so you don't just sort of sit around doing open spot gigs for longer than you strictly need to.
And then you spend 5 years living in perpetual disappointment. And then you get depression and do an Edinburgh show about it.
We've solved it, Ray!
So the 5-year plan is useful.
But I mean, lots of people in comedy do have 5-year plans, and we were saying before that Boy with Tape in His Face, Sam's got a 15-year plan.
Yeah.
And
Well,
always
good
has
luck
had.
with that.
Well, no, but he always has had, and it's not doing. He's near to $1 million and a run at Vegas. So there you go. It's maybe not always just talent.
But was that his plan? Like, or was
Yeah,
that-
exactly.
That was part of his plan.
Being on America's Got Talent was on his
exactly.
15-year plan.
Well, no, that isn't how you decide to put a 5-year, 15-year or a 5-year plan together. You put benchmarks, you put things that you want to be doing. You want to be doing Vegas, you want to be doing this. And then as you move through your plan and you add more at the end and you're ticking off stuff at the bottom, then you can start defining more exactly what those things are. That's how
What's your 5-year plan, Barry?
to get this pub done.
Just bought a venue, yeah.
My 5-year plan, I think that as a performer, the most important thing is to be a bit creatively free. And to be creatively free, you've got to have a place where you can perform that isn't necessarily at other people's turf. So it's not in other clubs, which is why I started my own club. My 5-year plan was to start my own club that was solid enough so that I could go on stage any night that I want in front of a full audience of people that might be there or might not be there. But an actual audience rather than 3 people and a dog, which is what open mic gigs are. And I can experiment and do things that I want to do and grow as a comedian. And I'm kind of coming to the end of that kind of 5-year stretch, but that was my initial 5-year plan, which is why we're in this venue right now, and it's why Angel Comedy came together. And then the next stretch is to actually kind of invest, and I've been able to invest in being a comedian and get better while I'm doing that, but the next stretch is to really go as deep as possible into different techniques and go, like, have a year where I'm going deeply into act outs and learning how to do those more methodically. And so really detailed going to, well, you're not in comedy, you wouldn't understand, John. but really go deeply into technique. And rather than
tell us about an act out.
An act out is something that you would do. If you look at, say, who does them brilliantly, Richard Pryor. If you look at live in concert, Richard Pryor is constantly taking on people in his life, and it's almost like you can, if you're a good mimic or if you have good voice, but you can also do it physically. Daniel Simonson trained at Lecoq, and he does things so physically. He does it with a real subtlety in the physicality that he uses. And so when he's playing a character, he might not seem or sound differently, but the audience really pick up on that being a different character. And people, like, if you look at somebody like Bill Burr has also deliberately gone through his career. If you look at every single special, there's a different style and different technique that he's using in each of the specials. And I think there is, as somebody that has certain talents more easily than others, like I'm very good at relating to an audience, that is something that is kind of in my palette at the moment. As well as doing that and leveraging that and being good at that, my plan is to get good at those things that offer more resistance, a lot more difficult for me, and to actually break them down and become good.
You ought to go and talk to Will Franken. He's awfully good at that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is part of what personally, and I totally encourage other comedians to do this, is to go to the people that are really good and say, listen, here is some money, can I study with you? And you know, like Will Franken studied with Robin Williams. So I was at Throckmorton Theatre in San Francisco. I was over there last year. Will put me in touch with them, and it was just after Robin Williams died. But everybody loved Will, and Will studied with Robin, and Robin was amazing at act house. Like, his mind was so kind of quick, but he was so good at embodying a person, embodying a voice on stage, and you can really see the direct correlation between the two of them. But in that same way of, like, personally, if I see somebody that's good, like we've got the Pajama Men coming here and teaching, like, they're phenomenal at characterization. So if you see somebody doing something good, and there aren't that many people doing things good that you can kind of put a pin on, like, go to them, find out, like, because there's no mentoring in comedy. So for me, anyway, my 5-year plan is I'm good, but to get as good as I can possibly get and to refine that, rather than necessarily what Hils was saying. Anyway, sorry, go on. Yeah, I'm talking to. So rather than say.
Sorry, Hils' mic technique is dreadful.
Also, to have that element of a 5-year plan as well as the industry element of a 5-year plan, and being aware that I can't be in just this space, so I've got to be going to other spaces. And like, I'm playing the Comedia twice this week, you know, making sure I'm in at the Glee, making sure I'm in at the club circuit, and making sure that I'm going to auditions as well, and having that balance. But being creatively free was my 5-year plan here, and that's where I am. So that answers.
I wonder. Not going to that awful Red Clan man in Paris.
The what?
Gaulier.
Him, the angry drunk. He's brilliant at being very kind of so dismissive. He breaks people, and then I think 5% of people come out more creatively brilliant because of it, and the 95% that are kind of like carnage, you never do comedy again. And we go, oh, look at the 5%, they're amazing, rather than seeing the devastation that he leaves behind.
That's like public schools, though.
Yeah, I know.
That sounds like a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing. It sorts the wheat from the chaff. I mean,
says the man that went to public school. I don't know.
I also wonder if that is the 5-year plan. That's the more commercial side of it, the more business side of it.
It's show business, isn't it?
But I also wonder if that is the thing that's contributing to what Copstick was saying earlier about the sludge. People got their 5-year plan. So I must have my hour in 3 years. I must have another hour in 4 years, another hour in 5 years. And people don't have that in it, so they use the formula.
A 5-year plan is only a guide.
No, but people will have on their 5-year plan. I will do my first Edinburgh show after 3 years, won't they? They'll have that on their plan. That's kind of a basic thing they'll have.
I found, so this year, for example, one of the reasons why I didn't go and see as many shows was because and it's something me and Barry were talking about beforehand, and I can't remember your exact analogy. You were saying I'd watched too much porn. Do you remember what you were saying?
Is it possible to watch too much porn?
We'll explain in a sec. If I get this wrong, I need you to jump in.
At this point, I deny all knowledge of what
this conversation.
I think this was a dream you were having, Simon.
Gone. You're in every dream I have, Barry. Share too much. No, but the reason I didn't go to stuff was because I sort of knew what I was going to get from that. So I sort of knew they were going to come back and they were going to be great or they were going to do something really good, but I knew roughly what was going to be in the show and how they were going to present it. And as a result, I sort of didn't feel like I needed to go and see it again, even if they were going to talk about something interesting or new that they hadn't talked about before. I just kind of knew what I was going to get.
You named a particular act. Are you comfortable doing that? Because that was...
I don't mind naming the acts, because we can all name acts if we want to. So James Acaster, I've seen him the last couple of years, and I chat with some, I'm not going to mention who that was, but I did chat with someone close to them. And
in their team.
And I did say the only reason I'm not going is because I kind of know from what other people have told me, he's doing a show in the same style he's always done.
Well, that's interesting. That's where journalists and you sort of differ. Well, he was, I'm sure, pure coincidence, he was actually the first show I saw in Edinburgh this year. Because we're thinking who's going to be a contender for the award. He was obviously, because of these nominations, we had to see him. He was an absolute high priority. Even though we knew is he going to do it? He's not going to do anything different. But that's not a reason not to see him.
I think he's great. I just thought to myself, I want to go and see someone else instead of that.
Well, time is tight.
Yeah, I mean that's the difference. You're reviewers, so you've got a particular objectives, whereas Simon and I and Barry and probably John for that matter, we can choose what we go and see. So we won't necessarily go and see those shows that we think we can predict what they're going to be like. We'll wait, and if there is a buzz about them, then we'll go and see them in week 2.
No, I'm with Simon. I was like, James Acaster. No, probably not. Because
it's tough to be boring.
Because it's fine and it's kind of clever and it's like.
Do you have the freedom to choose what you go?
Yes, I do.
Oh well, that's a different thing then. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
You have the freedom to go, or you contractually obliged, Steve. So you still have the deal where if someone buys an ad, they.
Yeah, well, that's like 6 over the whole festival. Chortle trying to get a snapshot of the whole festival, so you're seeing the people who are likely to win awards who are going to be brilliant. You're trying to see some of the new people as well, and the people who are on the cusp interesting. So you're trying to see like as much you can. As I see like 130 out of the 1,000 that are there.
A question that kept coming up when I posted around was how come some shows get 10 reviews and some get none? Like shouldn't there be more of a spread of if 5 reviewers have seen a show, none of the others will go and find something else?
Well, I think it's weird because there are the publications that see absolutely everything. The sort of the 3 weeks, and the student publications that see everything. So you thought that at least everyone should get 1 or 2 of them. Then the nationals will only see people who are super famous or super hot anyway. So there's kind of a small number of people in the middle, and I think we're all in this room, who are looking for the interesting things in the middle and coming up. So there's not that many looking for the mid-level stuff that hasn't got a lot of buzz.
And I think comedians think that there's some conspiracy amongst critics that we all get together at the end of July and put together a list together of who we're going to review. We all kind of, we might have our...
We want to outdo each other.
Well, we all think on the same lines, I think. I think we all kind of, as Steve said, we've got to see Acaster, we've got to see Nish Kumar, the people that were nominated last year. We know people that have won awards like Bilal Zafar, or the people that have done stuff at Amused that have got a buzz about them because, again, sorry, I used the word awards actually, but yeah, people that have been nominated and shortlisted for other awards we want to see. So there's a natural kind of, we can sort of justify everyone we saw basically. There's a reason why we've reviewed certain shows and not other shows.
The Copstick, you want to see, is it over 300 seaters or something?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm. That's absolutely not how I choose. I won't go and see anything in Edinburgh.
And also, somebody out as a Scotsman will cover that, so the publication has got the space covered.
I don't go and see anybody famous. I don't
How
go
do
and.
you define fame? How are you define? Are you just anyone who's on TV?
Well, like telly people and people with massive posters and anyone in over at the absolute outside of 400 seater, because I don't think that's the Fringe.
So if they've bought a massive poster, you won't go and see them.
Yeah.
So even if it's someone who isn't on TV, hasn't got an agent, doing a 50-seater at Just a Cave.
That's just not. He or she is not going to buy a massive poster.
They'd be insane. So, big sign.
And I tend not to go and see people with big PR. What I do, my email is out there. I'm on Facebook. As you just get in touch with me direct, tell me about the show. So there's that. And even from that, you can tell the people that send you the kind of, like I've got a 5-year plan, industry standard, hoping this finds you well type pitch, using all the buzzwords and whatnot, and I'll decide whether or not. I went to see Kieran Boy because he got in touch, and the girl he had like a mate who was helping him with PR, and she went, I don't know if you've heard about him, but he is one of the few working stand-ups today who's actually not a cunt. And I thought, okay, well that's quite a good recommendation.
That's a great pitch.
I could go with that. So it's people who have idiosyncrasy, people who sound like people and not fucking comedy industry machines.
So if they've got PR, you'll see them.
I say that people were nodding when you said that.
I don't like big PR. I have never in my life gone to see a show because of PR, and I sometimes don't go and see shows because of PR. And in fact, coincidentally, Peter White, who I saw in the brochure, and I thought, that sounds quite interesting. He's Canadian, which for me is a plus. I rarely see terrible Canadian comics. You just don't tend to get terrible Canadian comics, which is a sweeping generalisation. And Pete Johansson said he was really good. So I thought, great, that's fine. I think Pete Johansson's fantastic. Slightly less so after I saw his show this year, and he had a complete hasty meltdown, turned into a girl, more or less burst into tears, and then met me outside and said, I thought I told everybody I didn't want to review. Not quite as campy as that. Anyway, I'd already decided to go and see Peter White. And then his PR said, you've got to go and see Peter White, got to go and see Peter White. It's an incredible show. I'm like, well, I think he's on my list already. Yeah, it's domestic abuse. And I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting.
Left turn quite quickly.
Domestic
abuse. It's domestic abuse if you don't go and see it.
It's a domestic abuse from a man's point of view. And I thought, okay, that sounds quite interesting. So I thought, it's not what it sounded like, in the hoo-ha. So I go along, and I'm sitting there with 5 other people, Mash House, 5 other people, and he's doing his first bit, which was about sex, I think, and it was all right, but it wasn't great. Then he did his bit about racism, which was phenomenal, and he was having a gig from hell. But I'm looking at my watch, and we're 40 minutes in, and I'm thinking, somebody should be hitting somebody by now. There should be blood on the floor by now, if not a hospital visit or something. And then about 45 minutes, he tells us the story of, that's where he did the, I'm going to do a personal bit now because I've been told you've got to do a personal bit in an Edinburgh show. I thought, well, you haven't got very much time to start beating your girlfriend up, have you? And then it was basically his ex-girlfriend had threatened to commit suicide every time he wanted to leave her. And thank you very much. And I thought, well, fuck right off. If I'd gone along purely on the basis, I'm not averse to a bit of blood and violence and abuse in my comedy. If it's the right kind of abuse, if I'd gone along purely on the basis of the PR bump to see a show about domestic abuse with a unique slant, given that it was from the male point of view, I'd have been walking out 20 minutes in, what with the, lack of blood. So I never believe what PRs say. I never go because of PRs. I go despite PRs, and I just go and I listen to people in bars. I listen to what other people are saying. I listen to what comics are saying.
That's which is probably why people get 10 reviews, because we all say, who have you seen? And you go, we're going to see this guy.
You talk to people in queues, and they say queues and bars, and asking sometimes other comics that you rely on, and then you discount maybe their mates because they're going to say, oh, so-and-so's good, but you say, who else? And then they will start telling you the ones that they actually do really like, and that can be very informative. Really
there are a few people that I would always go and see if they're doing a show. I would always go and see Peter Buckley-Hill when he's doing a show, because I know it's going to be weird and creative, and it's almost certainly going to be fabulous, and quite possibly the best thing I see all month. And because I know most other people don't go and review Peter Buckley-Hills. And I went this year actually completely, I was so depressed that I was just wandering.
Living with me.
I was living with that I was just kind of wandering along.
Your own depression show.
It's
Copstick 2017.
I was just wandering along the Cowgate, and I thought, I can't bear going to see another fucking white middle class boy whittering on about how he's had a bit, or even fucking Bethany Black, Who's a good comic? Opening line. 2012 was a bad year. I don't care, Bethany. You're here. You're in fucking Doctor Who. You're working on the BBC. Get over it. Move on. Get the fuck out my face and stop. You don't do a show about it.
I've not seen that show.
Don't. It's dull. It's very dull.
I want to know what changed. I want to know the show that changed that. You said you're walking along.
Yeah, I was on. And I was just thinking, I can't bear it. And Kerry Marks. Flyered me.
Brilliant.
He flyered me for his own show, not some fucking team, not some juvenile offender that he's got on a, work scheme, not a PR person, him.
And it was great.
And I went, and I went to see the show, and it was fucking brilliant. It did not have a theme.
No.
Not really. It was an hour of funny fucking stuff. From a bloke who looks like one of these inflatable beds that's got stuck being de-inflated halfway down. It was brilliant. It was wonderful. And I left thinking, I remember stand-up comedy.
Yes.
And it was just wonderful.
That's what I think is one of the issues about feeling bored or whatever. I think there are so many comedians, like not so many, but there are certainly quite a lot of comedians that are as amazing as Kerry Marks. And they don't have a profile on TV. And they take up shows every year. And certainly I can think of a couple of recent Kerry shows that are just phenomenal, just been absolutely masterclasses. And I know that the last one did transfer to radio about his heart attack.
Intensive care.
But in terms of being legitimately kind of like available for an award, I think he would come into that category. But at no point was he registered for the main award. I don't know if he did with yours.
Enter out.
But he did, and
I'm sure he would have been. He would have been.
But certain people discount. I think because if people have been up for a while, you kind of discount in your
Whereas
head.
someone like
Tom Stade, who is just so many people absolutely adore, and they don't enter the radar, the awards radar.
It's also that balance I get about, like, see, if James Acaster comes for 10 more years, you're going to start going, well, I don't really need to see James Acaster.
Same as Phil Nichol.
Phil Nichol does inventive shows every year, but
he does something quite
different. But you tend to kind of see every third one or something, just to remind yourself how good he is. You don't necessarily feel like you see every one of them.
That's a problem, though, isn't it? In the sense that if you're skipping out on things, it could. I mean, what?
But what do? You're trying to see new stuff. You're trying to see the stuff that's been around 10 years and is brilliant. You're trying to see.
But that's the big issue. Is because one of the other things that kept coming up in questions was the way that PRs are working and the way that people are essentially buying your attention. Using that broadly about everyone who's in the room, it's filtering out certain people who can't afford that pull of attention, if that makes sense. They're not PRs who really work their hours and get your attention to a certain degree are going to mean that you get less time to reply to emails or reply to people who can't afford that, who can't afford posters or whatever it would be.
I don't reply to any emails coming to see my show at the Fringe, just too many of them. PRs, I think, make no difference to me, probably. I mean, it's hard to say exactly because you see the names around and stuff, but generally you're choosing, because they're I see acts like 4 days a week, 50 weeks of the year, so people I know are around, I want to see them. Copstick's the same, my Super Reese is the same. It's not all about, I haven't got a PR, I haven't got... There's also people who spent the money on PR and not getting the shows either, and they've wasted their money.
I mean, what worried me this year, I think the trouble is PRs are a bit more insidious. So we all sit here saying we hate them and we try not to read their press releases and we try not to go to the shows again. But on that very first night, I arrived in Edinburgh at 6 o'clock. The only show I booked into on my way up was James Acaster. Had to see James Acaster. Anyway, went to the Pleasance and saw him, came out at 8:30. I thought, well, I can't go back to my room now. I've only just arrived. I can't go home now. What else is on? I looked at the things that are on. And I looked at all the names. And the name that jumped out was Michelle Wolf. And I thought, I remember reading a piece. Brian Logan did something about Michelle Wolf, hot new American political comedian. I'll go and see her. I had no idea who the PR was. Blah, blah, blah. And of course, sure enough, it was impressive. And I don't read... Impressive are probably my least favourite of all the PRs. I try not to read their press releases. I'll glance at their list of acts. But somewhere along the line, it seeped in there that, and I saw her. But then on the other hand, she was also good. She did get a nomination for an award.
But you went to see because Brian Logan.
Yeah, well,
she might have been
But they're doing something good.
But it wasn't the PR asking me to go. It was
Brian Logan might have picked it up because of Mel.
Of course, exactly. There had been a bit of a pre-festival buzz about Michelle Wolf.
But that's
Also, the fact she works on the Daily Show is a sort of good enough baseline. Going, it's someone we've not heard of before. She's got this credential.
Because she did get nominated for an award. She was good.
Awards the only vindication.
Well,
I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but
Oh, you won't. Not us.
I'm aware of that, but I'm trying to get to the bottom of this because from an outsider, from a comedian's point of view, it feels like to a certain degree if you don't have PR you won't get coverage, but it might be a case of that's a correlation doesn't equal causation type effect. We're looking at it and going...
Now that's just comics trying to find another reason to blame something that's not them doing a very average show. Really, it gets me so...
How many shows do you guys go to that you just don't review because you're like, there's no point in me even working on a write-up for that?
None, I write everything I see. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if it's bad, if it's terrible, I probably won't. If it's not great, I won't review it.
Pretty much right.
That many shows that are that.
Well, exactly, because the filtering process is, I have to be honest. I don't see that many shows that are complete unknown quantities to me. I'll know them, even if it's just from reading Chortle or something. I'll know something about them. Yeah.
I mean, I try and see at least 20 shows that just look, what the fuck's all this about, and crazy, and I deliberately look out for small shows in weird venues, and I went to see a thing called Foil, which was in the comedy section, but it was a little play set in a hairdresser's.
I saw that too.
Hairdresser's shop, and the company had taken over a hairdresser's shop on Clark Street. I thought, how marvellous, I can go along, they hadn't got any help or any, I could maybe help them, and of course they were absolutely mobbed. They were pretty much, I think they only sat about 30, but they were kind of selling out. But I met so many acts this year that I paid 2,000 quid for PR, and it hadn't helped them get bums on seats, it hadn't helped anything. And I really think comics need to stop looking for excuses why people aren't coming to their show or why reviewers aren't coming to the show. It's not anybody else's fault.
I think a lot of them also rely on flyers from their production companies.
Yeah.
And they're,
crazy.
I mean, I can go and
they don't
fly.
give a fuck.
I have flyed this year and it worked brilliantly.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it because I liked what I was flyering.
The debate I had with Paul Whedon, Red 24 recently, was whether flyering is making a difference, because he said that he noticed a drop off in the flyering. And I said, was it the acts flyering or was it a flyering team? And he was saying, I've got great flyers, I work with them for years. I would say if you fly yourself, it's more likely that you get somewhere.
Ian Stone used to fly only about 3-4 years ago in the high street in Cowgate. Yeah.
It makes all the difference. All the difference. It makes a difference on two levels, I think. One, it's lovely for the person to be flyered by the act. You come and see my show. You think, oh, that's lovely. Then, when you do go, you've already got a relation. The act already has a relationship with his audience. They're there because I'm there because you asked me, which means I must like you a bit for some reason. And
she's pointing at Mary, by the way.
and if you point at me and go, oh, glad to see you got in out the rain or whatever, fantastic, we're already mates. And the whole dynamic of the gig is helped by flyering for yourself.
I don't think, for me, it depends on my mood, but most of the time I love flyering simply because I feel like I'm starting a story or a relationship with that audience member. I like the fact that, and I stand at the door, a lot of comedians ask why I stand at the door of every gig I do to say hi to everyone. It's because I
Really?
Yeah.
That's a bit intense.
Well, no, just say hi, thanks for coming.
As they come through, yeah.
Just as they're coming in, I'm just like, hi, thanks for kind of a
It's a bit much like a relationship.
He follows them home too.
I'm quite needy. I don't know if you've noticed this. Sorry, go on next.
Maybe it's what's holding you back. Maybe you're scaring them off.
We'll get to my career at some point. But another common thread of questioning was something that you touched on a minute ago, which was if the Fringe is becoming, if it's first of all pricing out a certain type of comedian that can't afford to go up because of the cost of venues and the cost of. So we're not talking about PRs now. We're just talking about the base cost of staying in there for a month. And
you rent your London accommodation out. Is how you do it.
Then you make a profit. If you've got somewhere in London, you can rent for a month.
You may not make a profit, but you should cover your costs.
Airbnb and stuff. Yeah.
It's a lot of people who've said that it's basically a white middle class playground at this point. It's a case of there's a
surely less so because of
what
free
I've been
Fringe
doing.
now. Surely it's less the case now.
I rent my flat out when I go to Edinburgh because it occurred to me about 5-6 years ago that there was my flat empty in central London and I was paying £1,800, £2,000, £2,500 for a flat for me and a couple of people. And I thought, this is madness. So if I can do it, I'm sure anyone else can do it.
No, absolutely. And also, go to the free fucking Fringe. Don't get a PR.
Yeah.
Don't pay for
posters.
thousands of posters that are only going to be postered over.
And
they're
do
pointless.
1,000 flyers or 2,000. Don't print 5,000.
No, exactly.
You only save 20 quid, but it's a saving.
Yeah. And flyer yourself. Just pretend like it's a fringe festival.
Yeah.
You know, it's not your first Vegas fucking run. It is a fringe festival, and do it like a fringe festival and you will be fine.
A lot of the bigger venues, and I'm going to refer to them as the Big Four, even though I'm not a particular fan of that label.
Yeah, don't go there.
A lot of the Big Four, in the perspective of comedians, it makes it out like, the venues sometimes make you feel like you're more important than you are when you're going up there to sign up for those things. Do you know what I mean? Because you're signing up for this big sort of venue that's got so many facilities, and you're not taking it up for a fringe. You're taking it up to be a part.
Yeah, well, if you're going to let your ego run away with you, then fuck you.
Well, that's like the big posters, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the big posters.
That is. And the sides of taxes and everything. It's just ego.
Yeah, and there is nothing more dangerous, more likely to lose you a shitload of money than being a small act in a big venue. They really are not going to look after you that well, because they've got bigger fish to fry, and if by the end of the first week you're not getting a lot of buzz about you, then you're on your own. And you can die on your arse in a turret in the Gilded Balloon, or in a hut at the Pleasance, and nobody will know. And nobody will know, and that will be your fucking fault. Baby comic, go to the baby comic nursery, which is a wonderful place. It's the free fringe. Nobody knows you. Don't fucking go and play with the big boys, because they wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire. You know, even the people, like on that first night when Bruce had just come out of James Acaster's perfectly predictable show and was looking for something else to see.
That's his timer for next year.
He didn't look up at the birds in the Pleasance and go, that's somebody I've never heard of, I might give him a chance. He went, I'll go and do a bit of star fucking. Michelle Wolf's doing a show.
And also for my sins, I didn't go beyond the Pleasance. I was just stuck in the courtyard, you know.
But if you'd seen,
my loss.
you know, Johnny Mediocre,
I do.
then you know you're not going to go.
I do like. I think it's the free fringe is absolutely brilliant for that reason. Like, you know, 2007 it wasn't as prevalent as it is now, but since 2007 it's growing. I know it's technically started in 2004, but the fact that you can go up and experiment is just and not so much cost. The cost of rent or the cost of the difference between renting. I think that's hugely important. But I think the reason why people often go for PRs and go for posters is about just the pressure put upon people to succeed. And I see this everywhere in society, but the difference between success and being good is golf. Often people can succeed and they're good at what they do. Like James Acaster is great at what he does.
I feel like he's another comedian. I feel like picking on him quite a lot.
I'm certainly not, because he's brilliant at what he does.
I think he's brilliant.
And I don't think, and we're not punching him, we're not punching up or down, we're using him as an example. But I'm just kind of saying that people will then go to him because he's got an audience, and the people that go to him like him. And it's a positive feedback loop. So you've got people that are going to come along and enjoy what he does. But you're not going to take so many risks on James. Yeah.
But it's not a success if you spent all that money on posters and you're getting 2 and 3 star reviews across the board with a mediocre show because you felt like you ought to do it.
Precisely, and that's the divide. The difference between success and actually getting good.
But I think, how do you define success? Surely success is being really good at what you do.
And that's not how people perceive success.
But in that case, people are wrong, and they need to change the way they perceive success.
I think I'm talking about not just performers, but kind of, you know, it's in the water, us as well. It's like, you know, or producers. I mean, you know, Bruce was saying earlier of like, and then I was proved out because they won an award. An award doesn't necessarily prove anything, but our idea of success is pinned to awards. And like, you'll know, Hils, from seeing so many shows from, like, you know, the top 20 or top 10 are all brilliant shows.
Top 30.
You know, top 30, they're all brilliant shows, and there's not much to tell between them, and it's often about the mood that you go in with or what's in the air. But it was like what Steve was saying about James. It's like, it's a brilliant show every time, but there are so many brilliant shows out there, and often it's about marginal gains. And it's like what the British cycling team kind of say, it's like, you don't have to be 50% faster than anyone else, you have to be 0.01% better. And I think that sometimes the posters and the PR give you a marginal gain.
That is if you're at the elite, though. I think if you're elite, that makes a difference. If you're just, what's his name, Johnny Ordinary, Johnny Mediocre, Johnny Mediocre, yeah, it's not. You're literally just making a loss for yourself by losing all that money.
Psychological as well, isn't it? A performer might be psychologically feeling better about things if he sees his face about.
Yeah.
And we know that.
Then he gets the bill and gets depressed and writes the next show. Yeah.
That's in September.
Initially, it gives him a boost until maybe it doesn't work. I mean, the critical time is that second weekend. That's when I had when I produced shows a while back. Someone actually went to bed. The only time she got out of bed was to go and do a show. She was so depressed, and of course the audience numbers went down and down and down. Then she complained. He went, well, it's because you're not flyering. Your mood and your attitude is it's no good. It's not working.
It's a negative feedback.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people, what PRs and what posters sell is dreams, and they're not just selling the dreams to the public. They're selling the comedian's dreams, and that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the investment in. Oh, like I am somebody. I am.
Yeah, I mean that we're back to. I want to be a princess when I grow up.
How did you know?
When do you stop thinking on our plans? But I mean, you and I'm not picking on you, Barry, here, but I just wanted to ask.
Go on.
Yeah, but let's pick
a little bit of picking on Barry. No, but last year was it last year you did the Barry experience?
That was the year before last. Yeah.
Okay,
How quickly they forget.
I know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I came to see the Barry experience. I was there.
That's very good.
Yes, but I'm saying you put up big billboards.
Did I?
Yeah, you had.
Didn't I say
self-holding like letters, and it was.
Oh, I had one billboard.
Yeah. And how did you? Was that what was the reason?
Well, I wasn't meant to have a big billboard. What was happening? I was meant to have one small poster that somebody I was working with at the time, who ended up not working with, convinced me to do against my better judgment. And I didn't. I think it was £250. I was like, oh, okay, I'll take 2 of these. Fine, if you think it's important. But and then I ended up not working with that person. But then those 2 didn't end up working out, and they went, oh, but I've got this big one, and it was But to be honest, I don't think that in any way helped. And I mean, for me, it was a nice thing. Oh, there's a big poster of me, and it's quite central. But I wouldn't have chosen to do that. Like I wouldn't choose to put an advert in the magazine anymore. I think 15 years ago it might have been a useful thing to do. Whereas now the magazine is so big and everything gets lost and everyone finds you on an app anyway. Go online precisely. So yes, I did, but I mean, in my experience of that, it was nominal but it was, it's nice to see your face up there and you go, oh, that's important. And
my question is
the reason why my show was busy in 2014, I like to tell myself, is that people enjoyed it, and then a lot of people came back and bought friends, and that's why Angel Comedy works, because it's a good thing. That's what good promotion is, as far as I'm concerned.
That's what success is.
Yeah, it's people enjoying it and telling their friends and coming back. You can be a good promoter in inverted commas just because you're good.
One of the best adverts I ever saw in Edinburgh, there was Tim Vine's with a massive poster saying Tim Vine is not appearing in Edinburgh this year, which promoted Tim Vine wonders.
Yeah, precisely. It's funny, it's good, it's out there. But and being fun and playful with things, there is a lot more fun. Like having, stickers that says "This belongs to Lionel Richie" all over the place. It's just
still
fun.
there.
Still there, but it's fun because it creates an idea that people laugh at, and I think that's much more important than you want to affect people emotionally before they come in a positive way. And if you do that through flyering, or if you do that through a funny little sticker, or if you do that through a pen, or if you do that through meeting them and making them laugh, or them having seen you before, I think that's the only thing that really works. But in people's heads, a poster will do that as well, because it's got your face on it, and they go, oh, look at that. And in the same way that Bruce said, I'd heard that name before, a big poster is often the first thing of, oh, I've heard that name. Where have I heard that name? Oh, I'll go see them. And you don't know why, but it's in the water.
Well, it's something that I have got to explain a lot in my day job with social media is the difference between old school buying a poster on the underground for a brand and investing in a communication channel on the internet with your audience, because they can sell an advert on a poster and they'll be told by the underground 20,000 people will walk past it and it will look great number wise for their boss above them, but how many people are going to go and buy that car, for example? Whereas if they invest in a great advertising campaign online where they explain why the car's great, why its safety record's amazing, whatever it may be, then they're more likely to have it in their head and have actual facts that they've invested in and a conversation that they've had, which means they've started a relationship with that person. That means they're more likely to go, oh, I need a car, or I need a comedian now, I'll go with the one that I trust and I know. And I suppose posters are the cheapest, easiest advertising way of them not making an effort.
Cheapest.
No, it's the cheapest way of them not making an effort, because like we talked about before,
cheapest way of not making an effort.
Well, no, here's the reason why I say it like that, is because any other way you make an effort is you taking more time to invest in a person, and seeing as your time is your most valuable asset, the cheapest and easiest way of doing it is getting a poster design and just printing them off.
Yeah, but the misnomer is that the effort is, I mean, if you've got enough money to spunk on posters, that's fine, but like an effort is people will work for a month to pay the £2,000 to have 5 of their big posters around town. That's a lot more effort and time than actually just going out and flyering that month. John's got something to say. Shh.
I was going to say there's a big complication with those big posters. In London, there are massive posters advertising TV programmes, but they're not actually paid for out of the promotion department promoting the programmes. They're paid for out of the marketing department marketing the TV channel. And I think in Edinburgh, a lot of the publicity publicity that's got out of the massive posters isn't for the artist. It's for the company that's marketing them. So the market, the
Live Nation.
the big agencies. It's worth the big agencies paying for or getting their artists to pay for those large posters.
The artist pays for it.
Because
it's promoting.
Yeah. So the big agencies will persuade you to have a large poster because it promotes them, not you, maybe.
In terms of, so Bruce and Steve, you were saying before about how you select going to shows because you've sort of seen someone, or you've a couple of times heard of someone, or whatever, or that kind of thing. How do you find your link between the normal circuit and Edinburgh is? So, like, how often are you scouting for things to look for when you're going to Edinburgh at clubs, or are you not doing that because they're doing 15 to 20 minute spots, so that's a completely different skill set to an hour?
You see a lot less club stuff than I used to, because that's how the industry's kind of gone to the one-man shows. So it's probably more for the new act competitions, the new act nights, where people have been pre-filtered a bit for you, so you're seeing best of the newcomers. So you'll see 12 people in one night and people lodging your brains going, well, check them out in Edinburgh.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Those sort of competitions, just seeing people who just seem to be on the cusp of getting to the point where they might start getting paid gigs. Those are the ones who their careers might move forward, and as you say, remember their names. The interesting thing, I don't know about you, but I consciously forget some of the names as well, more often than not. You know,
it's amazing when you look back at your notes, like from 10 years ago, and I see people like Lee Mack or Chris Addison or other names that have disappeared from amazing people that didn't even get anywhere in Hackney.
Well, I remember going to Bannerman's years and years ago at the Edinburgh Fringe and seeing three new Scottish comedians, and one was Richard Gadd, and I thought, well, the other two are crap, but I remembered Richard Gadd's name, and I always paid attention to everything he did after that. So actually being in that sort of three-hander had an effect on me paying attention to him.
But maybe he came to our student award.
What do they say about advertising? That you see 2 ads, it's when you see the third that you buy the product or something. And I think it's the same, like, again, I mentioned earlier, Bilal Zafar, he was kind of cropping up in competitions, and then he won the Hackney New Act of the Year. So you kind of thought, right, I do want to see what his particularly with the type of show he was doing. Actually, I was interested to see how that 8-minute 8-minute, very nice, neatly self-contained story about the Muslim cake shop. I thought, how can he turn that into a 55-minute show? And maybe it was only a 40-minute show, but it was still pretty good. It wasn't quite 55 minutes there. But yeah, it's not like, it's probably not so much just seeing someone in a club and going, oh, I like their 10 minutes, I'll look up to them in Edinburgh. It's competition, it's new act competitions, things like that. Yeah.
Also, clubs are quite solid set in who they book these days, and there's very rarely interested people come straight up through the clubs. They come up through the new act competitions, and then the clubs start booking them, so you're seeing them before that, really, I think.
Depends what gigs you're going to.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some open spot gigs where they've got like 20 people on. I mean, there are those where there are going to be 5 or 6 or 7 people in there. Are going to be pretty good.
Like there's a competition online just now that I go into a kind of a fugue of rage every time I see it. It's not like
the Laugh Factory. Yeah, the world's championship.
In the world. And you go, and everybody's kind of representing their own. So I've got Jambi McGrath representing Kenya,
and she's the only one though, so she doesn't even have to play against anyone.
Person in the world competition.
They tried to get me involved with that a couple of years ago.
Oh, what an absolutely
You are funny.
No,
risible.
Can I? So just so that
idea.
Just so that I've got something clearer in my head, because there's been so many different. What I'm basically trying to do here is I'm trying to work out from a comedian's point of view and bust a load of myths on why people actually. No, because I'm trying to. Alright, fine. So as I understand it, the myth of this is we pay, as in comedians, pay for PRs, big posters, flyering teams, and our own flyering efforts. We get people in. Then hopefully when we get you guys in, that boosts your other reviewers to come in, because once one of you's come in, the rest of you might have a chat, and then that sort of leads down the chain or up the chain or whatever way you want to look at it. The actual way it works, or the actual way you guys work, is you have a pre-assigned list of people that you want to go and see because of people you've seen on the circuit, and then you'll see those, and then when you're up there, you will be listening to the buzz of what's happening, ignoring PRs and maybe listening to each other's reviews, but generally trying to stick to your own thing for the time you're up there, and that will help judge who you're going to go and see.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is if you've got a good show, people will start coming to see it and you'll get the buzz, and that's the best PR, having a good show.
Yes, but in a way, what's happening with comedy is the same thing that happens with actors, in that actors depend on a whole bunch of other people to get them work, whereas comedy always used to be just one person going out and doing a gig, and that was it. Whereas now they're buying all this support in order to try somehow make their show better, which it actually isn't going to make their show better. They'd be much better being focused on getting the right room at the right time and doing a really good show, because the word will get out.
so simple, but that is
Well, the
true.
thing is, it is
I mean,
simple.
it's a waste of. I mean, the other thing is they're wasting a lot of time, energy, and money doing all these other things. Do their own flyering, just buy a limited number of flyers. Don't even worry about a poster, or just get 10 printed A3 just around your venue, whatever you want. But keep the costs right down, and it's possible to do it very, very cheaply.
It's not fucking rocket science.
But I think that
You're just a person standing at a mic doing ideally.
but they're scared. I think they're scared.
No, they're not scared. They're not scared. They're egotistical, and they are desperate to gather a group of people around them that then, when it all goes tits up, they can blame, because it can't ever be their fault. That is what it's about. It's about obscuring the fact that maybe you're shit, or maybe you're not shit, but you're not quite good enough. It is a very, very, very simple thing. And comedy is a very brutal thing. And that's what people don't like to face. It's just you and your material and a microphone. And you stand or fall on that. And it's only about you trying not to face that it's about, oh, I'll get a manager and I'll get PR and I'll get this and I'll get that. Because then when it doesn't work, it's not my fault. Yes, it fucking is. So either get better or get out.
I do agree with that, but I also want to kind of just. It's not a response to that, really. It's just something I've been thinking around what we've been talking about now. Is that I know a good few comedians that have come out to Edinburgh, and in my estimation and the other people's estimation, is a fantastic show. And sometimes, like you're saying that you come up with the sense of like picking up a buzz, or there are comedians that you want to see, and there are a lot of shows that fall through the net. I mean, one of the things about Kate's method of like people emailing is like having it open source like that really helps. Even like Steve's idea of somebody being able to pay £250 for an advert, or however much it is, helps getting somebody in to have a review. But sometimes it can be a real challenge just to bottom line get a review of people to come in and see a show. And there are so many, I can't put this strongly enough, so many people that are absolutely brilliant. I think things have maybe changed a little bit, but not that much, you know, and it can kill you as a comedian to see your friends who are like, or not even friends, even enemies sometimes, like that show is, you know, not that I have enemies, but the idea that sometimes the buzz is a very industry-centric thing, and people can be talking about in bars or whatever, and it's a certain echelon, a certain type of people, or a certain type of show that appeals to judges, critics, reviewers, and sometimes the buzz that is around, like for comedians or people that are just Scottish people that are living in Edinburgh, or that are really enjoyed as shows themselves, like Kerry Marks. The buzz around Kerry Marks, this show wouldn't have been heard by the industry per se, because the industry aren't excited by it.
Myself and Kate both went and saw it. Did you see it, Chris? So you did all right. You got a couple of good reviews.
I'm using Kerry as an example of something we've already pre-agreed that you wouldn't necessarily be predisposed to go and see because he's been around. And I'm just using it as an example of a show that wasn't fetid.
It's not a perfect system, but one other thing that I noticed it this year so much, and I don't remember it before, but again, it's about greed of the industry sludge. That I would get a lot of PRs and sometimes the comics themselves saying, "Oh, you can't see. I really need a review. Really need a review. We're selling out 7 nights a week, but I really need a review." You go, "Oh no, you fucking don't." And with PRs, they'll go, it's fantastic. The show's absolutely brilliant. It's incredible. It's selling out every night. Oh, we've got 4 stars in Broadway Baby and 4 stars in this and 4 stars in that, but we really need the Scotsman. You go, "No, you don't. There's somebody who's playing to nobody who really needs the Scotsman if it's good. You don't. You're just a greedy cunt."
All they've been paid £2.5 grand and they haven't delivered on that yet, so they're trying to get some value out of it.
Absolutely, and it ties into people's idea of what success is, because often you can be in a sellout show and things can be going well, and there can be that sense of depression that some comedians would get, which is like, it's not well. So instead of seeing their career as a 5 or 10 or 15-year journey of getting better and slowly the word of mouth coming, there is this idea that if you don't get an award, or you don't win an award, or you don't get nominated for an award in Edinburgh, then the show has been a failure. And I think again that's the way people approach their careers these days. And it's to do with, I think some of it is to do with survival. It's very difficult to survive as a comedian. So if you get nominated for something, you've got more money coming in, there's a more chance, and so there's that kind of desperation under that in very practical terms, not just ego. But I think there is an ego and there is a sense of what success is. So I do think that those that's a valid point,
I
definitely.
mean, I think it probably gets more difficult now. There's so fucking many of you. Jesus Christ, we're up to our nipples in bog standard comics. So, maybe a cull, or just letting the dead wood drift off.
I'm up for a cull.
Well, also, we're up to our nipples in good shows. I mean, we were saying before there's like 30 brilliant shows, but there's also out of the 1,000 shows, there are probably 100 shows that were pretty good. And that's why it's tough, it's tough seeing everything, and, we just can't get...
Just talking about what you were saying about falling through the cracks, I mean, I did kind of get a bit of a wriggle on to go and see Tim Renko, who is somebody like that, because I had thought, Tim will be fine, Tim will be great, I'll go and see him in the second week. He had to cancel 2 shows because nobody came. Now he's an award-winning comic that who everybody knows, but who else was cancelling shows? Somebody else quite extraordinarily, A, good, and B, Michael Brunstrom, the Malcolm Hardee Award-winning Michael Brunstrom cancelled shows. And
I think Danielle Wald cancelled some pre-shows, didn't she?
And I went to see Matt Price, who I think is phenomenal. And he had some sellout shows, and when I went to see him, there was about 4 of us there. Went to see Peter White, there was about 4 of us there.
And that doesn't, for having 4 people in doesn't matter if you're in a free venue.
Exactly.
It seriously matters if you're in a paid-for ticketed venue, because you have to pay a guarantee to the venue. So if you have a really, let's say wrong time, wrong room. Yep. I mean, that's the other problem with being in a room that's too big. They still want you. They still has a guarantee based on the number of seats in that room, which is an absolute killer.
And with most of the paid venues, there's 25 quid for your tech.
Can I ask you to elaborate on what you said a minute ago, where you said you thought they were scared? I just wanted to know what your point was there.
That people are scared.
You said that you...
Well, I think if you feel you've got a group of people around you supporting you, that helps you psychologically just feel a bit more secure. You don't feel so lonely and isolated. And one of the other things that I think people don't do enough up there is they all hang about with their mates and they don't get out and don't network, and they really should be blagging into the industry bars, working out, or just going to places where they know you lot are going to be or I'm going to be, and when they see us they should, if they possibly can, even run along the side of us as we're going somewhere, because we're all in a mad rush.
Before you said that was
me
me being
desperate. Side of you
and
chatting. I mean, if Barry ran along the side of me for 2 or 3 minutes, all you did, and went, it's really good, and by the way, not only my show but so-and-so show, you must come and see it, I would go, that's fine.
I'm going to hold you to that next year.
No, I always say to people, just come up, find me. Yeah. Find me. I'll be in a bar. The later in the evening, the drunker I will be, so the more likely I will be to say yes.
At least I just remember it.
Yes. Give me a flyer. Yes.
Yes.
Another thing that sort of keeps coming up is how long comedians should be able to use awards or quotes on their posters for. Because I've seen comedians ride on the same quote for years, and I always put the date on my quotes because I'm like, I want them to know that maybe this wasn't this year's show or this was 2 years ago or whatever. I mean, how long as reviewers do you think they should be doing it for? Is it till the next show you have?
I saw one act this year who had his poster on stage, and it said one of the greatest young comics around, Arthur Smith. He was in his mid-30s, and I think it was when Arthur Smith introduced him at the Hackney Empire show 10 years ago,
So it wasn't even a proper quote.
No, I think it was
an introduction. Those are the sort of quotes that really annoy me, which is when someone comes off stage and someone slaps them on the back and says, well done, that was great. And then it goes up on there. I get really cross about that.
Always ask for permission to use a quote.
Well, but that person might well say yes, but it's still wrong. It's not really.
Don't trust comedians' quotes because either their mate or have been
I do think you shouldn't use a quote about one show about another show.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but that happens. So you can't.
You can't avoid your program together in February. You haven't got your show yet, so I think it's okay to use the last show if you're going.
But it might be a completely different.
True.
In an ideal world, it'd be a completely different show. And
you can't avoid that because you can't get a quote.
Don't use fucking quotes. Write something. The audience is not so unbelievably stupid that. I stopped them eventually. But I saw 123 years ago Tom Steed when he did his first ever show in Edinburgh. The year he did True West with Phil Nichol, and he did his first stand-up. And I was fucking blown away. I thought it was just absolutely brilliant. And I put something like, so cool, he could be the answer to global warming. Ha ha! Oh, my sides. And then I saw him the next year, and it had the quote, and the show was okay. And then I saw him the next year, and it still had the quote, and the show was a piece of shit. And I said to his PR, because she was like, oh, come and see Tom's show. So I went to the show and I said, okay, we can do two things here. It was Laura Cochrane, who I really like. And I said, either I write the review and print it and it's a 1-star review and I will rip him apart, because that was just appalling. That was just, he may as well have sat on the stage and wanked. It was, oh, hi there, I'm Tom State. I've got I kind of got a gravelly voice and I'm really good looking and I'm just going to... Anyway, I said either I won't print the review, or I will print the review and it'll be a 1-star review. So she said, all right, don't print it. So I said, that's great, but I'm not coming back. None of this, he was just having a bad night. And for it was something like the next 6 years, because I never went back to see him again, because I thought, okay, he's off the list, he's turned into a wanker. And he kept using that quote until I said, I think it was when Mel Impressive took over, I said, please don't use that. Mm-hmm. That quote is from 2005, I think it was, or 2004. I said, since when? I've seen him and he was quite possibly the worst show I saw all that year. So if you want a more recent quote from me, it is, tragically, this once fine comedian has turned into a complete egotistical wanker and I never wish to see his show again.
Again, I'd book him.
The Scotsman.
Another thing I would say about quotes is pick your sources. I saw on Lucy Porter's post this year, it had 4 stars splashed across there and it said comedy coroner. I said, what the fuck's comedy coroner? Yeah. I looked them up, they got 100 Twitter followers. So it's a person with... Yeah, and you go, well, that was the big one right across these amazingly big posters. I think, well, so that makes me think worse of you if that's the best you can do is a 4-star from a bloke or a woman.
No, quote abuse. I mean, it's not just about comedy, isn't it? Film critics, everyone has it. I mean, I've got one at the moment. Nina Conti is on in the West End, back in the West End, and the quote they've got from when I reviewed it in the West End 6 months ago is something like, "You'll never see anything like this." So you'll never see anything like this. What I actually wrote was, "You'll never see anything like this unless you go and see Paul Zerdin."
That is,
And I've got another quote, and I think I don't want to get this wrong, and I won't name and shame. Someone in Edinburgh who's using a quote from the Standard. It wasn't me, and I asked him where it came from, and he says 15 years ago.
Wow.
And he said, he originally said 10 years, and I think he then felt guilty. He said, actually, probably longer than that. Now I think about it. I had a day job maybe 15 years ago. Well, if you got a really good quote 15 years ago and he still hasn't made it,
got a
better quote.
I mean, there's one of the nicer PRs, Paul Sullivan. He was looking after Vicky Stone one year before, when I think it was like the second year she did, and the first year it had all gone terribly well, and then she did the Philip Schofield song or something, and so he'd got her interview with the Guardian, cover of the Sunday Times or something, or the Times, reviews from most of the broadsheet, and she went, Paul, we have to talk. And she said, well, I've only got, why don't I have more stars? And he said, well, you know what, the kind of quality press have all been in. He said, Paul, we're talking quantity, not quality. So she actively wanted him to go for, I don't know much about comedy, but I know what I like.com, and just in it for the free tickets.co.uk, and all of those ones. Quantity, not quality, was what she said.
Now, I'm just going to interject here and just say this is all it's very good, and it's very kind of I can absolutely see it from your perspective. But from the comedian's perspective, a lot of people are just wanting to stay in the game in order to get good enough. I think one of the things that's never spoken about is that the longer that you get to do comedy, the better you get at it.
Probably. Possibly.
Supposed to be.
Well,
some people never get better.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean?
But I think
Tom Skate.
I think if you're never given the opportunity to, you don't get good at it. And so staying in the game is hugely important. Finding a way to earn enough money from comedy or around comedy and been doing that is hugely important, which is why so many people, I think, from certain kind of backgrounds manage to make it, because they've got a place to live in, or they've got enough money supporting
private income.
And it's not just about them not, people are good. Those people are good, but they have the support in order to be able to get good. And the time, which is hugely important. And the reason why I say that in this context is that I think that sometimes quotes, if you have had a good show, it shows that you have had a good show. Even if it was 200 years ago, you have it within you to have had a good show. And I think sometimes, as a comic, it's just very important to be able to find some way to survive. So if you have a quote that is good, you will use that quote because it means that somebody will come along, and most people aren't connoisseurs of comedy. Most people don't know what's happening on the ins and outs. Most people wouldn't even know, a lot of people wouldn't even know that you could have a show by a brilliant comedian one year and it could be rubbish the next year. It wouldn't even occur to people that somebody a lot of the time it shows I'll MC and people come up to me afterwards and go, "You're really good. You should give stand up a go." That is out there, and so
still think you should do that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Within that world, the context of the not the industry, I think it's useful and important to have quotes that say, "I have been good, I am good, come along to see my new show." And I think that's a slightly different kind of, I'm not disagreeing that there's statute limitations.
I used to get a lot of compliments on my fantastic tits, but they've got a bit saggy now. And if I told you that I had great tits and you copped a feel, you'd be very disappointed.
If you paid money to see
Well,
them.
exactly. You'd be very, very disappointed.
You'd have a PR, wouldn't you?
Just because they were perky ones.
But I think at the same time, a lot of people, when you're selling a show, have an idea of permanence in their head. So when you're selling, yeah, I know,
and they're heading for disappointment.
So your tits aren't trying to make you a career for.
But that is
this is a comedian who's trying.
Even worse if they were.
But what if your tits could be improved by hard work?
I would be all for that, but I still wouldn't be advertising them as still great after all this year. Because frankly,
I don't disagree with the notion of a statute of limitations on reviews, but I do think that it's important to to realise that comedians, like people performing and working, if they've got a quote that is from a good show that has been good, it's not disingenuous to use that quote, however long ago that is, because it proves that they have been good. And in some ways you can go up to a show, like right now it's very difficult to get reviews if you're on the Free Fringe. So if you've done Free Fringe shows for the last says a lot of the people that I know.
absolute rubbish.
Can you name some people that have struggled?
I know people. I'm not going to name people because they would have been with PRs and stuff, but I do know people that have gone to the Free Fringe and find it very difficult to get.
But they were with PRs and they did
both with and without PRs, because there are so many shows out there, and there are fewer and fewer publications. There are more.
Yes,
my name's Johnny, and I can do I can write a blog. But in terms of review, the people in this room,
intelligent people like what we are.
But you are reviewers, and potentially you are the full complement of reviewers in Edinburgh. When I say full complement, there's Brian Logan, there's the broadsheets, but there's. But,
can I just
but my point being is that it's very difficult to get reviews, and I do like that are worth anything, and so that if you do and you have,
and also once if you've seen someone like 2 or 3 times and they've been perfectly fine, then you sort of go, well, that's it. Then I'm not bothered by that anymore.
Yes.
But back on the quote thing. I mean, this does not keep me awake at night. It's just some funny little stories about old quotes, and it's really odd. You put up that on it, but No, absolutely. But no, you got a show to sell, and that's fair enough. And
I'd just like to say that from here on in, I would like to be referred to as the future of comedy, which is how I was described by The Independent in 1991.
I think you still are.
So that's me now.
I also
that's why comedy's in a mess now.
The other point I just wanted to make as well is wouldn't you guys love for your quotes being used over places because it publicises you? Yeah. Surely you want even if it's 10 years ago, isn't that lovely to have your review on Nina Conti? Bruce Dessau, isn't that good?
Not anymore. It is annoying if they're slightly taken out of context. Like Steve said, I'm not going to sue them, but it's...
Your editors, we were talking about the corporate thing, your editors of your pub, in your case, because you're an employer, they're going to go, oh, look, Bruce's name up there, that's good.
Well, they like it, I guess, standard.
I mean, it's fine as long as it's not somebody who's turned to shit.
Misrepresenting
and now I'm being held up as his greatest fan.
That's about your reputation again, which is positive or negative, and it is your name out there, but that's.
But I think in that case, you just say to them, please stop using it if you don't want it used.
Copstick has the best example of a misuse of a quote.
And I think this should be encouraged. It was many years ago. It was Jason Wood. Oh, yeah. Sadly, no longer with us. But he was so. I was such a fan of his, and I went up to see his show, and it was just lazy fucking shit. I thought, what are you doing? I mean, it was vocal impressions of dead people, and just awful. It literally at the end. You thought he was going to say, "So will this do, love Jason?" I thought, "No, it fucking won't do, Jason." So I ripped into him. I remember using the phrase "toxic camp," and I had to be concise. I only had 50 words and gave him 1 star. And the same night that the Scotsman came out, there was massive banners across the front of the assembly rooms that said A star, Kate Copstick the Scotsman, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, now that was 4-star comedy, although the show was 1-star comedy. Scotsman had a sense of humour bypass about it and made him take it down, but I thought that was fantastic.
Would it be fair to say then that a review is there for everyone, but it's more impactful for industry people to notice who else who you guys are talking about, rather than public who maybe will read it and go, "Oh, I'll look them up"?
I don't think that impactual is even a word.
Okay, fine. I'll Google it.
I refuse to answer that question on the basis that impactual is not a word.
I'll overlook it.
Oh no, it is.
Just checking on Urban Dictionary just to see if we're touch or not.
Urban Dictionary.
Urban Dictionary. I spit on your Urban
wrote
Dictionary.
the Urban Dictionary definition for that word. It definitely exists.
Top 6 are urbane, not urban.
Well, I think we're all writing from the punter's point of view. I mean, kind of especially Chortle has a lot of industry look at it, but 90% of my readers are still punters. Higher, because there's not that many in the industry. The Scotsman, and almost everybody is a real punter, I would have thought, and same with the Evening Standard especially. So you are writing for the punter.
That's what I'm writing for.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about not going to clubs as often because the way the industry's gone, it's gone more to one-man shows. And I wondered if that has caused Edinburgh to explode in the way it does, or maybe it's caused comedians to see that as more of their 5-year plan, and they're focusing more on hours than club sets and all that.
I think, it's interesting. I mean, I can only speak for myself, not Steve, but the problem is you can spend 4 nights a week in Soho Theatre, there's, and that's the thing, because you want to see, Barry slightly touched on this before without actually using, I don't think you actually used the word art, but there is this thing that, seeing comedy as an art form, and you want to see that art form developed, and that's why, I'm more interested in seeing a 1-hour show at Soho Theatre than seeing 3 acts do 20 minutes at a club.
I kind of wonder where this one-hour show thing goes.
I know, and it's unique. It's English, isn't it? It's not in the States, is it?
So they put all this time and effort in putting a 1-hour show together, and then a lot of it never ever goes anywhere else.
Well, a lot of the shows I'm seeing at Soho, the 1-hour shows that I didn't get to see in Edinburgh because there's 1,000 shows.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the shows that don't get to Soho Theatre.
But that's what people, because there's fewer clubs now and more comics, they're all trying to get on the art circuit. I can tour my own one-man show thing.
Yeah, but that circuit's not huge.
That's not huge, but if you can get 30 people to come to Leamington Spa to see you, and you, because it's your name on the poster, that's a stepping stone. And next year you can maybe get 50 people.
But what I'm saying is, what's the end product of this?
It's to be able to tour.
What do all these hundreds of people doing one-man shows that last an hour? What are the 90% of them? What's the objective?
Well, their objective is, as Simon says, to have their own audience who are going to come and see them. And you only, you don't need to have a huge audience.
But where are they going to? Where are they going to do it? How many venues are there that could do that?
Hundreds in the country. You need to have like 100 people in 100 towns.
I think that's definitely one.
That's what they're aiming at, I think.
But do you not think it's sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, I think that's definitely one route. And I think that, Stuart Lee's lauded that route of you need 10,000 people to give £5 a year, or 5,000 people to give £10 a year, or one person to give you £50,000 a year. And you've got a career, and that's all you need. But I do kind of also agree that there are people just do a show because they think they should do a show often, because it's the done thing, and it's in people's heads the idea of what success and what being a comedian is. It's like you go and you do your Edinburgh show and you go, I'm going to do my hour, and it's like I've got to get a 20 together, and it's like, well, those are just kind of the benchmarks that have been set before. It doesn't necessarily make you a good comedian just because you've put a show together or had a show up in Edinburgh, and and like in the same way, winning an award doesn't mean you can do a 20 at the Comedy Store.
No,
it's like there is a totally different.
They're very different.
There are many in the word of art of what Bruce was using. In the art of stand-up comedy, there's a huge difference between Harry Hill and Bill Hicks, and a world of difference between those two people. But they both still be defined as comedians. And in the same way of like, doing an hour-long show is totally different to having a great 20. And, there are, and to being a somebody that's on panel shows and can host a TV show. It's totally different skills.
The one show that I did see in Edinburgh, and just back to talking about things slipping through the net, was, and it's exactly what Hils said about you've got to get the right venue, the right time. And there's a comic called Richard Brown, Scottish comic, who I saw when he did his Edinburgh debut hour 2 years ago, and he did it in the kind of tent on the steps on the way down from Chambers Street down to the Cowgate. So, it was a horrific venue, horrific. Freezing cold, battered with rain. There were no sides to the tent. But I thought he was quite brilliant. Brilliant, just angry and articulate. And just, I know he probably would not give me any thanks for it, but very, very much. You think, I found the new Frankie Boyle. That kind of, the way Frankie is now, though, intelligent and, properly political. I just thought he was phenomenal. Then I didn't see him last year, and I don't know why. I think it might have been because he was on at the same time every year, which is 12 noon. Now, this is it's a 10 o'clock in the evening show in a venue where there's buzz around and lads around and whatnot. I saw him again this year, 12 noon in the cave, but he was in the biggest cave with part of it cordoned off. So again, what Hils was saying about a big venue, he was pay what you want.
Yeah, but they do charge by the size of the room.
But and it's a massive room, so it had no atmosphere or anything. And there were probably about 20-25 people there, and you can see him not just as a kind of as a person starting to fall apart, and you just go, he needs. I gave him a 4-star review the first year. It had to be a 3-star review this year because he's on the cusp of that bitterness that comics get when they think they're not getting anything that they deserve. Yeah. And he's very smart, and he has obviously a very close and Scottish affection for alcohol, and the relationship, I think, is getting closer probably by the month. Which again is dangerous, but that I find very frustrating. But 12 noon, kind of those venues.
Especially for year 3. If you're the one, you take what you're given.
He's got no one pushing him, no one looking after him. He seems to have absolutely no support whatsoever, and there was no buzz. And I don't know whether that's because he's a bit of an arse when he's drunk, or he doesn't have any comedian friends, or what. But certainly he seems to be. I said in my review, please, somebody take this comic, give him a decent venue and a decent slot, and let enough people see how good he is, or he will just... Well, he couldn't spontaneously come back. Well, he could with the amount of alcohol.
But he's a falling through the cracks comic. But
he's a falling through the cracks comic.
What I think would be interesting is if we all adopted a venue that we actually saw all the shows in, on a free fringe. So we just sat there and watched every show through. Might take 2 days, but then, we probably all have a favourite venue. I've got a little one that I go to that I'm not telling you. I can't remember the name of it. It's Grass Market and Keep Going.
Oh, the Dragonfly.
Yeah.
The Dragonfly is a lovely little venue.
And although it's off the beaten track, but it's a good little room. And I think that if that way the acts would see that people are there, it would also drive them to going to the better free fringe venue next year and seeing an opportunity to move up through, because the free fringe, it's got to that point when people are doing the free fringe will have to for maybe 2 or 3 years. So there needs to be some sort of even hierarchy within the free fringe, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah. And the only way that's going to be is because the rooms are nicer and they've justified getting in there.
Which happens, a counting house, obviously that's different this year because counting house ballroom is nice, the big room in the Hive, despite smelling oddly, is a nice room.
One of the interesting things about marketing and the size of a room, of course, is the reason that Richard Gadd was considered for the increasingly prestigious Malcolm Hardee Award as
the award-winning increasingly prestigious Malcolm Hardee Award.
Yeah, indeed, yes, but which is created by A. Ward, Mr. and Mrs. John Ward. But he was considered for the cunning stunt, and Copstick will explain why Richard Gadd was.
I knew he did it last year, and he was in a very, very small venue because nothing sells a show like being a sold out show. People will queue for a show that's got a sold out thing. And that's why all those bored in the big venues sold out. You're going, oh, sold out today. I have no idea who it is, but they must be good if they're sold out, so I'll go and see them tomorrow. And so this year Richard went into an even smaller venue. Also in the Banshee Labyrinth, but it was the smaller, and it gets queued.
It was rammed. It was unsafely rammed. I did actually speak to somebody about.
Oh, for God's sake! That is one of my favourite venues in the world.
But it's closed down now.
If the lighting went out,
I love the Banshee Labyrinth. All the venues.
But if the lighting went out, no one would get out.
But he consciously did that, didn't he? Because last year he was in too small a venue, so this year he was in an even smaller venue.
Yeah. I love the Banshee Labyrinth. I love the Cabaret Voltaire.
I also want to add at this kind of, because we're talking about venues, there is a hierarchy in the Free Fringe venues now. It is very difficult to get the nice rooms. People know what the nice rooms are, both in Peter Buckley Hill, in the Laughing Horse one, and it's people that have either been there a while, like Richard Gadd would obviously be given preferential treatment, or Rob Orton, or people that have been good for a while. And that's not that it's unfair, but there is also the element of the people that are friends with Peter Buckley Hill or help him out. It's like it isn't just a meritocracy, so it is becoming a meritocracy as well as a friendritocracy, if that's to use another Urban Dictionary phrase. So it isn't as open source as it's beginning to ossify, is my point.
Ossify is a good word.
One thing I would love to see, if I have a dream, and in my dream people like Barry and
people like Barry.
And there aren't really many people like Barry. I would really love to see more independent venues starting up across, not just yet another Laughing Horse venue, but proper independent venues.
Start your own.
I would love, if I had the money, I would fucking love to. I'd ban PRs. There would be, you want to come and play in my venue? No PR.
That's why a lot of people, comedians, places like the Stand, because it's an independent venue, and very few other places are, and it's I think it's important.
I've got one final question, just that I'd love to get all your takes on, if that's okay, just to end on. If you were able to change, or if you could just wave a wand and you're able to change one thing about the Fringe that bugs you, or that you think just shouldn't still happen, or whatever that may be, what would that be?
No PR.
Price of accommodation, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, it's the cost. It's the cost in general. So accommodation, don't spend money on fairer venue deals. No, don't waste money on PR. So all of those things.
The price of beer at Pleasance.
Oh yes.
£5.30, £5.50.
Blame Edinburgh University.
I know. I'm not blaming Pleasance. But we know it's not the Pleasance. But the punters think it's the Pleasance that are doing it. I'm just saying the beer was outrageous.
And soft drinks are even more.
The assembly rooms, we should all go into the assembly rooms industry bar. It's £3 a pint.
I think the Fringe Society should intervene and say that no one person or organisation can run more than 3 rooms at the Edinburgh Festival.
3 rooms is nothing, though, is it?
Absolutely, and that means there's no money to be made off the bar sales, there's no money to be made off the ticket sales, or no substantial amount of money. There's enough money to be made just to make some people survive, but there's not huge wads of cash, so it's less of a commercial enterprise for both PRs and for venue owners.
But the Fringe office, of course, doesn't control the Fringe. No one does, so they would still exist.
I mean, they do have some say in the parameters of what's considered the Fringe. I don't know whether that's possible. I wasn't told that this had to be viable.
I want to
free money for all.
I want to add to my no PR thing. I want to add Barry Ferns should run the Fringe.
Yes.
But only 3 venues.
It'd be great if you had solutions to what you'd love to happen, but it's more of a case of finding out what irks you rather than what irks performers. Although I totally agree with Barry in the sense that it's a case of, I mean, that expansion recently with the Gilded Balloon to the counting house was.
We don't know how it's going to work yet, though, because the financials aren't certain yet.
Well, I mean, when I had her on the pod a few months ago, and she said it was literally because she's running out of space in her current venue.
I know the reasons, but you won't know whether it's viable, whether it actually is a good idea until people get their payouts, because no one quite knows how the money's working.
Can I just say one thing before you? No, the Fringe is still the most amazing place to be, and all we're whinging and moaning about it. the fact that there's thousands of people being so creative and trying to be the best they can, even if the best they can is only mediocre, it is still an amazing place to be.
I have to say it was my 30th consecutive year at the Fringe. And I think twice I wasn't going to go up, and then I saw reviews starting to pop up in the Scotsman or wherever, and I have to go. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. Cheers.
Pleasure.
And that's the end of the post-Fringe podcast. For me, I got so many things out of this, namely that I don't need PR and that I should be more inventive with my marketing at the Fringe and just not follow what everyone else is doing. It sounds obvious, it really does, but sometimes you need to be told something obvious just for it to kind of cement in your head and for it to be at the forefront. And I'm really glad that I got that from the experts. I'm really glad that they told me how they find out about shows, what PRs they avoid. I also loved hearing what annoys them about the Fringe and the link between the circuit outside of the Fringe and the Edinburgh itself. That to me has been invaluable, and that to me has really given me a better perspective on the filtration system that they have for finding new talent. I should also say this was my first attempt at doing a multi-channel, multi-mic podcast, and given the fact that the mic technique of the guest was not amazing, the sound quality was not as amazing as it usually is in pockets of that interview, and I am more than aware of that. I did my best job, and overall this is something I'm ridiculously proud of. I recorded it 3 days ago, and I've spent nearly 12 hours editing the thing since then. I've basically set aside the last couple of days to do my admin, but between that I've been doing this, and I'll be honest with you, this has basically taken priority over my admin. So I really hope you got something out of it, and I really hope you enjoyed it, even a modicum as much as I did. And if you got anything out of it, I'm happy. Please email me, please tweet the guests and thank them if you did enjoy it and if you appreciate their time. All their Twitter handles and all their contacts are in the show notes for the podcast, which you can find at simoncaine.co.uk. If this podcast helped you out, or if this podcast was valuable to you in any way, let's say it saved you 50 quid because you're spending less on posters and flyers, or say it saved you $2,000 because you're no longer hiring a PR because you realised that maybe they're not as effective at getting you what you want as you thought they might be. Take what that saved you and bung me, say it saved you 50 quid, bung me 20 quid, or if it saved you $2,000, bung me 100 quid. That seems about reasonable. All the money gets ploughed back into the show and the project itself, and it supports the thing you like. So if you like this and you can afford it, I realise not everyone can afford it, and I'm not expecting everyone to donate, but if you can afford it and you're sitting there thinking, wow, that was a really good interview, I got so much out of that, it's really going to help me next year, it's really going to help out the community as a whole of comedians and anyone going to Edinburgh, and I'd love to support this project, you can go to my website, it's simoncaine.co.uk, there's a PayPal button on there. If you can donate, do it through that. If you can do it as a regular donation, so like say you want to donate $1 or $5 an episode, that would be amazing as well. You can do that on patreon.com/Ask the Industry Podcast. There's a link for that on my website as well. Both of those things keep this project afloat. So if you can do that, please do. But if you can't do that, an iTunes review would be golden. Just an honest review. Be really kind and be really honest in it. But only if it's a positive one. If it's a negative one, if you've got any feedback you want to give me that's constructive, just email it to me directly. Don't put it up on iTunes. What's the point? Don't spread negativity on the internet unless you've actually got a reason to do it. And I make it so clear how you can contact me. Send me that information directly. I don't mind, I can take it. But if you've got anything positive to say, write it there, because it really helps with future guests and with people who are looking for new podcasts to listen to. If you could share it on Facebook or Twitter or directly with someone that you think will get some value from it. So maybe someone who you know is going to Edinburgh next year, or just anyone that you think will enjoy this interview in any way, shape or form. All of that helps, and all of that really keeps going the project that you value. So if you do value it, please do one of those things. If you like this podcast, you might also be interested in the fact that I have got solo pods, in other words, one-on-one interviews with some of the panelists from this podcast. So Bruce Dessau has been on the podcast on his own, and we talked about London Evening Standard reviewing and all kinds of stuff in relation to that. Copstick was also on, talking about her views on censorship as well as comedy, as well as the Fort Police involved in comedy and more stuff to do with the Edinburgh Fringe. And Barry Ferns will be on the podcast soon, so look out for that episode in about 2 or 3 months' time. Hils Jago was episode 1 of the podcast, so if you want to scroll back, that's a mega pod. That was a very long one to go through. And I'm aiming on getting Steve Bennett on at some point as well. So if you'd like to hear from all individually, those are next episodes I'd advise you download, and you'll learn loads more about the Edinburgh Fringe, as well as the circuit, as well as everything else you might want to know about live comedy. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much to all the guests and to everyone at the Angel Comedy Club. I honestly can't express how much your cooperation and your help made this happen. I can't take full credit for it, and I never would, but I need everyone to be aware how difficult this was for me to put together, but how much easier it was made by the cooperation of everyone involved. So sincerely thank you all if you're still listening this far in. Why are you listening to yourself for the last 90 minutes? But thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for donating if you do. I'll see you all in about 10 days time. Bye.